somebody would take offense
I've seen that as well.
of being asked where they're from.
Because it implies that they don't belong.
Yeah.
Right?
But
it's that acknowledgement that you're different.
Yeah. We're back. Episode 7. Thank you for joining in. Thank you for tuning in wherever you are. If you're listening, if you're watching, we appreciate you. We are here, episode 7, Cassie Podcast. Make sure you're liking, make sure you're sharing. And we have a special guest who's been here already, familiar face, Mr. Mohammed Bojan. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, man. Thank you for coming again.
No
appreciate
worries.
you. I wanted to get you back on because there was a lot of things that with what you do that we could dive into. But first off, just getting how you are, how things going for you right now? How's this second lockdown that we have going for you?
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster. I had exams, so
uni last time.
I didn't really have a Christmas break. So I guess I'm grateful that I had things to do. So the second lockdown didn't affect me as much as it did other people that maybe didn't have uni coursework or exams and stuff.
Yeah,
but then after exams, I realized, damn, like there's a lot of time that needs to be filled and I can't go out. So it's just been about finding the balance since.
Yeah, that's been one of a major problem for me during lockdown is keeping busy. I feel like it's been the same thing for a lot of people. It's easy we spoke about it on our episode a while ago. Episode 3 spoke about it, about procrastination, how that can eat you up.
I know.
So but just as long as you're keeping busy and focusing your mind, it does help a bit. So people who don't remember, people who have listened to you for the first time, you are a med student.
I am, yeah. In my third year.
In your third year.
Yep.
It's still crazy to me. We've got like 3 more years to go.
I know. You don't have to keep reminding. Flip it up. I know I still got quite a while to go.
It's crazy. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about was when we was texting, we spoke about identity. And I was thinking to myself, like when you meet someone and you're having a conversation with someone who's meeting for the first time, like what would you say is your own identity? Like when they say who are you, like what do you do? What are the things that you would come up to say? Like if you was walking around with like 5 things above your head, what you do? Like
5 labels,
5, 3 or 3 or 2, whatever it is.
Black mirror labels above my head.
I was thinking about it. What would it be like? What would yours be?
I think it's that's probably like the central question for most people. And for many, life is about finding the answer to that question. Who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? I think when we're out and about and we're asked where we're from, right? There's many different ways you can take that question. You can be quite, offended by it in some instances. For example, at uni where you're, the only black face, for example, and somebody comes up to you, they're like, where are you from? There's 2 things going through your head, right? You're thinking either, does this person want to know where I'm from in the UK, right? Southeast, or are they asking where I'm from?
Yeah.
Right? And that issue of from is quite interesting because it changes depending on where you are. So when I'm asked where I'm from in this country, I say I'm from Gambia. When I go to Gambia and people realize, oh, this guy is different. This guy is not as Gambian as us Gambians. I wonder where he's from. And they ask me, where are you from? I'd say the UK. So where you're from is dependent on where you are, how you feel about yourself. But I think a lot of the times when we're asked where we're from and we give an answer and the person's not satisfied with the answer and they prod a bit more, we're sort of trying to satisfy their sort of requirements, tick their boxes. Yeah. So if somebody asks you, Asha, where are you from? You go Southeast. They're like, no. I mean, like originally. In other words, originally where you're from, you tell them. That's you going, okay, this person wants to know, where I'm from in Africa. This is very, very different.
Yeah, no, it's something very similar with me. Like growing up, I'd be like, someone asks you where you're from, like black kid in London, UK, I could say, your African, your heritage, Caribbean country, African country, whatever it is. So I'd say Uganda. Then I go to Uganda and I'm with Ugandans, and they're looking at me like you're not Ugandan. Like
you're not
they're
real.
they're just like they just smell it out straight away. They sense it, like whether it's what you're wearing or you're walking.
So it is difficult because this is the sort of dilemma that people from, you know, the African diaspora, for example, have to face in this country. It's things like this that, you know, other people don't have to think about and can come under the category of privilege to some extent, right?
Yeah.
Because, you know, if I was of a different ethnicity and I was asked where am I from, I would have no hesitation whatsoever. But because I have, you know, this skin color, I talk a certain way, I walk a certain way, I dress a certain way, people assume that they know exactly where I'm from.
Yeah.
And when I give them an answer that's, you know, not towards that assumption, it becomes problematic.
So what is the correct answer? Because the way I look at it, if I saw someone who was of Caribbean or African heritage and they asked where they're from, and they say England, or let's say for example someone who's born and raised in England, they say I'm from England, and someone prods them to, you know, say their heritage, like whether it's Caribbean or an African country, and they would take offense of that. Because I've heard and seen some circumstances where somebody would take offense.
I've seen that as well.
Of being asked where they're from.
Because it implies that they don't belong. Yeah. Right?
But
it's that acknowledgement that you're different.
Yeah. But the way I look at it, if someone, if they take offense to that and they don't sort of acknowledge that side, I feel like there's a problem there.
So it's like a double-edged sword, isn't it? You can't win, right? If you as an individual are not happy being confronted about where you're really from, and then when you do give an answer, the other person's not satisfied, or, you know, you try and justify it and they're not satisfied, that's quite difficult. So I think for me, it's about being comfortable wherever you are, right? Regardless of where you are from per se. Where we're from changes as we move around. You know, when I was in school, where I was from, that particular question, I would give a very specific answer, Gambia, straight away. And then you go to Gambia and you realize, okay, I'm very different. Like there's a massive cultural shift here. And the answer changes yet again, United Kingdom. And then sometimes I say, oh,
it's like, I'm
from blah, 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 but originally I'm from, just to, you know, sandwich it and to avoid that conversation.
It's like in Uganda, like I wouldn't be called like a Ugandan. I'd be called like
a Westerner.
Yeah, like an English,
Westerner.
Something like that.
A Westerner, 100%.
So it's crazy. Something that I had to deal with because I went to Uganda when I was quite young. I was like 11, 12, around that age.
Yeah.
So I had expectations, and then I went there and I realized I was being looked at like I wasn't Ugandan.
Right, 100%.
So I had the feeling of what the hell then, like.
Were you treated better? Were you treated any differently? Did that translate to actual change in how people approached you?
Well, for one, my grandmother there is she's quite known in Uganda, like in where we're from, like in the city.
Yeah.
Because she's grown up with a lot of people who are known from here and there. So people know her and they know her face and they know her name and they know how all her kids and grandkids are from, you know, England, the UK. So that sort of already, if I was walking around, I was with her, they will sort of already know, like, oh, that's probably blah, 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 blah. I didn't feel a specific energy towards me.
Okay.
By words, but through looks.
You just felt the gaze. You felt the heat of the gaze,
looks
right?
and auras.
100%.
I could tell something's off here.
Right.
But I couldn't say that. But then again, I was young. If I was a lot older and I was out a bit more, and even the last time I went, was 2019, I was a bit older and I was out a bit more.
Yeah.
It's more opportunity for me for people to, you know, be with me and treat me a certain way, act a certain way around me. Yeah. Which I really know the way some people are, especially in, you know, places like Africa countries. People can try and take advantage if 100%. They think look, he doesn't know about.
They'll profit on your naivety, bro, and they'll not care because it's about survival. Okay, they can justify anything.
And it was weird because I would think, damn, then, you know, is England better? I don't know. Like, is England better?
Exactly. Is England any better?
That's what I'm saying. But then
that's the question, right?
As I got older, I understood perspective. I understood, you know, when I get older and I experience a different side of it and I get more immersed in the culture, because even though I am Ugandan and I understand the language, I understand everything about the food and whatnot, it's different to actually living there and being raised there. So 100%. For when I get older and I get in there a bit more and I understand a little bit how things work a bit more, then my views might change and whatnot.
I grew up in Gambia, so I spent 5 years of my childhood in Gambia, so I was quite, you know, accustomed with the culture. I knew how to go about doing things. So whenever I go back on holiday, it feels like home. It does feel like home. Yes. And it's weird because I think we've both read Akala's book, Natives. And he sort of speaks about going back to the Caribbean on holidays and how he feels a weight lifted off his shoulder. Because when he walks on the streets here, something tells him that he doesn't belong. You know, whether it's the way he's looked at. So we spoke about the gays, right? Or whether it's people asking, where are you from, right? And having their expectations projected onto you and how you identify. Or whether it's interactions with the police, law enforcement, you know, systemic issues. When he goes back to the Caribbean, although there is that cultural disjunct, right, that you relate to, he feels a weight lifted off his shoulder. And it's because people aren't looking at your skin, right, and using that as the marking sheet.
It's refreshing.
It is.
Because people look at you because you're not.
Of course people look at you.
But it's not because of...
You know it's not because of that. And that just makes you feel different. It's hard to put into words.
Yeah, it's something I'm still... That's something I'm still getting over, because that feeling, like you said, when you go back, you feel like you're home. How Akala said in his book, he feels like it's refreshing, it's a weight lift off his shoulder. That's something I'm still dealing with. But like I said, I feel like I need to keep going. And keep experiencing it a bit more. The last time I went, it was the least amount of, or should I say, it was the most amount of refreshness I felt. If that makes sense, because I was a bit older and I went out a bit more. The first 2 times I went, I was a bit young, and I feel like it will only get better the older I get, the more I go.
100%.
So, but that's something I'm still getting over, like going there and being able to enjoy that feeling of...
Definitely. I feel like we all have this inner desire, right? This inner tendency, this inner gravitation towards where we're from. Right? Whether you were raised here or raised there or raised somewhere else, you always want to know, you know, inherently, where am I from? You know, you see people, for example, that are adopted by, you know, Westerners, and they come to the West and they're socialized in the Western way. They talk just like a Westerner, and they reach a certain age where they're like, I want to know where my parents are, like my true parents. You know, that's nothing against their adopted parents or their adopted culture, but there is this inner desire to seek out, you know, that homeland, that feeling of home.
Yeah, because it's a part of finding yourself.
100%.
That cliche, famous saying of, you can't know where you're going unless you know you came from, or something.
100%.
That is like so real in that situation. I think about them situations where, you know, not parents, but people who for any reason have gone out and adopted another kid, but from a different total cultural background. I just think, what? I mean, good on you, but like, I just feel like that.
It's
I can't imagine a world where that kid would not want to like
to find out,
just to find out.
It is difficult.
It's crazy. Something you touched on earlier about survivalness and in Africa. You know, I often think about where we're from and where we've grown up in our communities, and I align that so much with who was it, Darwin, and his survival of the fittest thing. I feel like that's what it's just what it is.
100%.
It's how we set up. Like, even though it's something that needs to be changed a bit. I feel like survival of the fittest applies very much to people in like the communities we've grown up in.
100%. And I feel like it adds to your character. It builds character. Those experiences 100% build character. Like, if we didn't go to the school that we went to, we wouldn't be where we are. I don't think we would. Because when I go to uni and I realize, you know, people here aren't from my type of background. People here can't relate to what I went through. But in some ways that gives me the upper hand because I'm cultured. Right? And it's affected how I approach certain situations.
You spoke about, we did a project with Yusuf, who was here on episode 3. a Black History Month project, and you spoke about how you was of a very small percentage of Black people in your uni. So how was that? Like?
Tiny percentage. I don't actually know the percentage because I don't think it's reported like that. And that's part of the problem. Like, these statistics get lost because of, I would say strategic categorization, right? By that I mean, for example, the BAME categorization, the Black, Asian, minority, ethnic. That is a very, very broad category that homogenizes the experiences of loads of very, very nuanced groups, right?
Yeah.
And within that, there are certain groups that are disadvantaged more. And it's not a competition between the disadvantaged groups. That's not the issue. We should all have the same opportunities. But when you have a categorization like that, you ignore, the needs of certain individuals. So, for example, the number of Black students, right? Black male students, especially on the medical course, it's tiny. Like, you can count it on two hands. No joke. So yeah, it like begs the question, why is that the case? Why is that the case that we're in 2021 and we're still having these conversations about representation in, certain industries?
It's
it's a massive question. There's been books and, loads of academics have, spent their whole lives trying to find out the answers to these questions. But it is quite interesting.
There's a lady I was trying to find. I forgot her name. It was something Williamson. I forgot her name. But she's an author. She's a podcaster. She's wrote a lot. She's done a lot of stuff. She wrote a book. No, she didn't write a book. She had a podcast with another individual. And she was talking about. I forgot who the other guy was. It was an interesting conversation though, and they were basically talking in this part of the talk, in a conversation, they were talking about like selfishness basically, and people not being able to look beyond their own peripheral vision, like being able to help out the person beside them. And
100%.
And
it's like what, self-preservation,
right? And she was talking about, one of them mentioned that theory of survival of the fittest, and they were like, one of the guy was like, no, that's wrong. I don't agree with that. That shouldn't be how it is. That you need to focus solely on yourself in order to make it in the world. And I was like, at first I was like, yeah, no, you're right. Like, we should be helping people, lifting people up, whatever. But then I was like, but wait a minute. Where I'm from, where I grew up, when it's really peak, you barely got enough to be feeding who you've got around you. So you don't have time to be like, oh, my neighbour over there needs some help. I need to help them. So I was like, no, survival of the fittest is a thing, but maybe it depends on where you are.
100%. I think it's good to have agency, right? And to want to do things for yourself and for your direct family. But it's also good to extend a hand to those around you. I feel like that's something that a lot of different faith systems advocate for, religions, for example. It's about this charity and giving and thinking about the community.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because there's a book I spoke to you about it a couple of times, but when we had that big, remember we used to have that big debate about R. Kelly and
I think we were talking about objective morality, right? We were talking about
So that book I mentioned that day, the author of the book, he talks about religion, and he talks about studies that went on. It was mainly in America, but he talks about studies that went on between people who were not religious and people who were religious. And it showed, many of the studies showed that people who were religious were people who most likely helped other people. They gave to charities. They gave money to people who needed it. They went out and helped homeless people. A lot of the charities may have been religious stuff, but basically the point was showing that people who had believed in some sort of religion were more likely to help out people beyond their main circle than people who were not religious. And he was having this conversation because in, let's say, 10 years or so, around the time that the 9/11 happened in America, he was talking about there was these authors that came about, and there was this movement that came about called the New Atheist, which was these people talking about how religion is the sole cause of all these deaths and all these terrorist attacks and suicide bombings,
Islamophobia.
And there were these like there was like three main authors, but they were just writing hard and writing these books about, you know, how religion is bad and whatnot, and how it can take people somewhere. And then this guy was basically, he was partial to both sides, and he was bringing up, you know, stories from both sides. And that's when they brought up the studies that came about. I forgot the names of the people who did the studies. Right. It's left my mind. But he was talking about the studies, and, you know, I thought it was quite interesting. I don't know why I found it interesting, but I thought it was interesting, surprising to me that the more religious people were the people that were to give more.
No, I think it makes sense. And I say that because, again, religion is an anchor point for a lot of people. When we talk about identity, that is one of the other labels, right? People identify as Muslim, as Christian, people identify as black, as white, people identify as being from a certain country, of a certain ethnicity. These are all things that we use to describe ourselves, right? When we meet people. Exactly. I just described identity. When we talk about giving, right? Religions advocate for peace and giving and charity, and that's something that's common in all religions. And you could make the argument that you don't have to have a religion to give.
No.
Because you don't, right? You can just be a good person. You can go about, you know, reaching out to your community, and this and that and so on. But religion gives you a reason for doing that. And that's why people gravitate towards it, in my opinion. So religion would say, if you give, if you're a good person, this is the end result. If you don't give, if you're an evil person, if you indulge in this, if you give into your bad habits and so on and so forth, this will happen to you. And again, in my opinion, humans need those two dimensions. Now you're thinking long and hard, but when you're not given parameters, and you're just left to your own devices, like nothing good comes of that. You could argue against that, but then we have laws for a reason.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna.
And you could also make the argument, okay, like I have a good moral compass, I have a good heart, right?
Yeah.
But again, like that's subjective. And we spoke about this in length. Like what is good, what you think is good, what you deem good, ethical, correct, right, is not necessarily what I might deem right and ethical and moral.
It's a fine line, but the question is like, where is the line? Like
that is the line that I feel, in my opinion, religion demarcates for a lot of people. It draws that line. It says, here's the border, here's the line. You do this, this is bad. You don't do this, this is good.
It's funny, how did we get, because there was a point in time where everybody went, many people went to church. There was a point in time, however many years ago it was, many people went to church in my culture where you went to church.
I mean, not me, I went to the mosque.
But... Yeah, of course, sorry, mosque or church. Your parents were sorry to pray. And I always think about at what point in our history, did that not become a thing anymore for like the general person? And now to the point where the general person who doesn't believe in God, you call them an atheist, doesn't believe in anything, but they still live through certain traditions that are traditionally religious.
There's a lot of hypocrisy. And I feel like it's a bit unfair for people that don't have a religion. Let me just, disclaimer, I don't want to get attacked here. You can do whatever you want. I'm speaking from my experiences, from what I've gone through. Okay, these are my opinions. Okay, disclaimer. People that don't have a religion or a faith system expect people that do have a religion and a faith system to justify why they believe in a higher being. But I think it should be the other way around. People that don't have a religion and a faith system should justify why they don't believe in a higher being. Because a lot of people that you approach that do believe in a higher being will give you evidence, right? Whether or not you want to scrutinize the evidence and say, okay, this is not very... Whatever you use, whether you use like a scientific ruler or you know a different philosophical ruler or whatever you use, but just to argue that there isn't simply because there isn't evidence, I feel that's a bit unfair.
But I feel like for me, that's the whole point of people who have a sort of faith and that sort of religion, is to have that faith, that hope, if you would call it, in the absence of evidence. For me, that's how I define it. That's like the defining factor of someone who is religious and someone who you would call an atheist, is that for some reason, I don't know why, but a person who you would call the atheist, they're the kind of person who grasps onto something that they need the proof, they need something to see with their own eyes, to touch. And the person who's religious is happy and content with having that faith of something or about something without the evidence of actually seeing it themselves or touching it. Like, they don't need to, they don't need that physical thing.
I think it's interesting because in this exchange, right, you've highlighted a couple of things. One is you have defined evidence as things that you can see or touch, or you can define within scientific parameters, right? Molecules, atoms, or whatever. But we know that things exist outside of that construct, because science itself is, it's objective as far as we know what objective to be. Do you know what I mean? There's things that science can't answer. Science can't answer why. Just deep it. Science doesn't tell you why, right? Why are we here? What's the answer to that one? It might be able to give you a series of events, right? It might be able to give you a probability of a certain thing being true or false, but it can't tell you why that is the case. And that's where I would say faith comes in. Because faith to me is a different dimension. It's another level. It transcends what we can comprehend, what we can actually construct. Because we've constructed science. This isn't something out of this world, right?
Definitely.
So, so like believing in a higher power requires you to put aside those sort of human limitations and to really think outside of, science and all these constructs that we have.
That's what I think the beauty of religion is, which is something I'm still discovering, but that's what I think that's what I feel the beauty is that to have so much just faith and hope and positiveness about something that you like have no evidence of. Like, for someone to tell you, like, say someone's ill in your family, and not you, just like an example, someone's ill in your family and someone to tell you it's not looking good, and you to have so much like faith and just the feeling,
I think that's beautiful.
the feeling within you that it's going to be okay. And there's no evidence to show that it's going to be okay.
Exactly.
But you just believe it, is it?
Yeah.
That's the feeling that I think is, that's what I think the beauty is about religion. And I feel like it's just a shame that some people, I'm not saying you've got to believe in any God, but for some people to just believe that everything is scientific. And I feel like you're missing out, man.
Yeah. I think also there's a difference between faith and having faith and having a religion, right? Because religions are defined like faith systems. You can't just say I'm Muslim and then do nothing after. You see what I'm saying? When you accept to being a Muslim or a Christian, that comes with certain responsibilities, right?
Yeah.
You need to do certain things. You might have to fast. You might have to, well, in my case, you'll have to fast. You'll have to pray. You'll have to give charity. You'll have to go on Hajj and so on, stuff like that. And worshipping a higher being as well. There's a little difference there as well. Because people that are religious worship God, right? People that are not religious claim that they don't worship anything. But I would argue that not to be the case, because we're all a slave to something, right? If you're not a slave to God, per se, then you might be a slave to your finances. You might be a slave to your job. You might be a slave to your desires. You might be a slave to... Do you see what I'm saying? So really and truly to say that, religious people are, they're slaves and slaves to God. They don't indulge in all of this worldly stuff. It's really saying, okay, I'm actually maybe I'm a slave to something different. That's my argument. That's why I would say.
We touched that last part there that everyone is, but I feel like that's the way this world is.
Yeah, that's how humans are.
Yeah, that's how humans are. There is something that has chains on you, and as you grow up, you just got to learn to just be unshackled from those chains. It is interesting, something that I think I mentioned to you before about a study that was done. A study was done to atheists about they had to sign a contract. I mentioned it to you before. They had to sign a contract that the contract says that if you sign this, you're signing away your soul, and you're getting paid for it. Right. You're getting paid to sign away your soul, and this was done for people who were atheists, who weren't religious. And at the end of the contract, they can rip it up. You know, it doesn't have to be legally binding, but there were still people who were not religious that couldn't sign a sheet of paper that said they were signing away their soul.
Right.
And that, I think itself is something that's so interesting.
Because I feel like that's a very interesting study. And I feel like it speaks to, again, that innate, inherent feeling of there must be more to this life than simply being here for 70 years and then that's it. You know, we spoke about the feeling of wanting to go home but not being able to articulate that, or the feeling of not belonging where you are and feeling that you belong somewhere else. I feel like it's similar with faith. Like there is this sort of inherent inner desire to find the meaning. Like why are we here? What is the meaning of life?
That's the
and yeah, religions propose the answer to that, and it's up to you to sort of decipher which answer fits with, what you want or whatever. But like there are things out there.
That's the biggest question that over the past couple of years I've been asking myself and trying to find out, and that's one of the things I harp on about on this podcast and episodes I do, is people need to work deeper to find out about themselves and who they are.
Yeah, I feel like the COVID-19 pandemic really, really brought that to light as well. There's a lot of people that had sort of identity crises. They, did not know what they were doing, who they were, because you realize that a lot of the things that we do on a day-to-day are literally just distractions. Going to these restaurants, if you party, the party lifestyle, if you go uni, that whole environment, it's all a distraction from, the true question, which is why are you here?
Yeah.
So when people are stuck at home and they don't have those distractions and they're forced to scrutinize their meaning, their purpose,
it's hard for some people.
It's very difficult. It is very challenging.
It's hard for some people, but it's got to be done. I thank you for joining me.
Appreciate it,
again. Do they have so long, but I always appreciate our conversations, and I hope other people take it and take something from it as well. So I thank you for joining me, Mohammed.
No worries, bro. Anytime.
Your ad's gonna be there, but tell people how to get hold of you, how to follow you.
Yep. So I'm not a massive Instagrammer, but I started using it again. It's m.bojang813. Don't have to follow me. Like I don't need you to follow me, but if you want to follow me, then follow me. It's up to you, innit?
Everybody, I appreciate you for listening. I appreciate you for joining in. Oh, your thing you're doing, the charity thing.
So I'm part of a couple of societies at uni.
Yeah.
One of them I co-founded called KCL Escape, which is like an escape room society. And we've partnered with another society, Team Orange, and we're fundraising to make packages for the homeless, because obviously there's people outside forgotten because of the COVID pandemic, but they are still outside and they're still homeless. So we're trying to make packages for them, deliver those packages. And those links will be in my bio. So you don't have to follow me.
But check the bio.
But you can check the bio.
Hey, man, I appreciate it.
Donate what you can.
Appreciate you, do a good thing. Guys, appreciate you for listening. Appreciate you for tuning in. Please share, please like, interact, comment on the videos. Let me know what you thought of the episodes. I appreciate it. Have a good morning, have a good day, have a good night. Stay safe, stay sweet, stay street. Done.